What's dangerous about me? Hello? I bleed the same. I have 3 kids. They're all pretty normal. I've never hurt anybody in my life that I know of.
On a cold and rainy morning, I woke up to find myself tracing good times I've been through to make them last. And the fingers on the shoulder snapping out a simple tune. A book was staring made me wonder what it was I really done about my past. And the winters by the window, I would listen for the spring and be snapped back to my homework by a screen. But I knew the days would lengthen into running through the woods, and our hair would trail before me, and we loved 1,000 ways in every dream. Vagabond, tell me what it is you run away. Vagabond, running only makes you see, running only makes you see your answer is another lonely day. On the Chesapeake, Ohio, and the southern Santa Fe, I would listen to the music on the radio, and the words would come out jumble like they jumble in my mind. I'm turning wheat fields into forests, I'm making shanties into mansions, turning smoke clouds into dreams that never fade. Then I turn another corner on my way to get lost, and the bottle in my hand would hum a blues. It would tell me of a mystic who'd been blinded by the sun. So I throw away the bottle, I get the next train out to somewhere, as I try to measure up to fill my shoes. Vagabond, tell them what it is to run away. Yeah, tell them, vagabond. Running only makes you see, running only makes you see your answer is another lonely day. Vagabond, you're a vagabond, just a vagabond, only a vagabond, vagabond.
As far as I'm concerned, it's an extremely significant night. we've made history here today. This film has never legally been shown to a public audience in the UK, i.e. you can walk up, buy a ticket, go into the cinema, sit down and watch the movie. It's always been shown, if it's been shown at all, under club conditions or under some sort of funny legal fudge. We're the first cinema that ordinary people can just walk in and see this ordinary film.
The BBFC do not have a statutory obligation to view theatrical films. Local councils do have a right to overrule them, essentially, and we submitted it to 3 councils, and Leicester and Southampton both overruled the BBFC and gave it an 18 certificate uncut.
Neither I nor the press, I must admit, thought we were actually going to get this approval. But when it came through, I went for a coffee afterwards with a journalist from the local paper who said, well, for us it's a win-win situation. Yeah, if you lose, then we can kind of like, we can peddle the liberal argument that free speech done down yet again, but if you win, it's kiddie porn on the rates.
There are rumours that the BBFC in fact wrote to Leicester City Council, not effectively telling them to not grant a certificate to this film, but effectively putting the film in a very dim light and putting it in the way that if you show this, do you know the trouble you're causing? When
we made an application to the local council to screen Last House on the Left, the BBFC lobbied the local council by writing them a letter, which I only saw at the actual committee meeting, which implored the local council not to give this film a certificate, which I thought was a bit naughty, really.
I'm not surprised that censorship exists anywhere. I think it's silly, and I think the Brits are acting silly, and especially the censorship committee is acting very silly, because there's no reason to ban it. It's a film. It's a film. The initial impetus of the film, the whole promotional aspects to the film were, what? Keep repeating to yourself, it's only a movie, it's only a movie, it's only a movie. Well, take that to heart. It's only a movie. You can walk out of it. You're not a captured audience. Anytime you want, you can leave the theater. If you want to see the whole film and see what it has to say, then I guess you have to stay, But that's all. That's all. And if it touches a chord, then then God bless the film, because it should touch a chord. I think any kind of education should touch a chord. Otherwise, it's not education, is it?
I mean, I don't understand. What is the thinking of a board of people who thinks that, one, that people have to be protected from films, and I guess the other question is, why are they the ones who are qualified to do it? And I don't understand those questions. But of course, no one is qualified to do it because it's a preposterous presumption.
It's just a bunch of people down in Soho Square in London who are looking at a bunch of movies that they personally may not like. It has to get down to that level. There are things that you and I might view where we feel passionate about, but the difference is you and I can walk away with an opinion. With the BBFC, they can actually put a certificate or not onto a film, which affects its availability in terms of the general audience. That, I think, is wrong.
Clearly, the censorship isn't doing anything, because when I was here 4 years ago, so many people had already seen Chainsaw. And in these 2 weeks that we've been traveling, particularly the last few days with David from Last House, we've asked people before the screening, how many of you have seen Last House? Now, here's a movie that's banned outright, and I'd say a quarter to a third of the people in the audience have seen the movie. So clearly the censorship is ineffective.
Everything that's censorship is trying to prevent people from seeing. The internet is allowing people to gain access to, and by censoring it, people want to know what it is. They're curious because they want to know why it's censored, which drives people all the more to go to the internet and try and find these video nasties.
Yeah, I mean, censorship doesn't really work on any level these days. Certainly not now with the advent of DVD and the internet, that anyone can pop onto Amazon, order their Region 1 disc from the States, have it delivered to your door within 5 days, and there you go. Well, the director of the BBFC has always had the power to overrule his examiners. When films go in, they are viewed by a team of examiners, but the final decision will eventually be with the director. James Furman was head of the board for 25 years, I think it was, and he was famous for overruling his examiners, and he would have his will would win the day. The two films that he's most remembered for not passing are Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist. He resolutely would not listen to anything on those two films, and they remained banned for the whole of his period in charge. Now, when he left, both films were passed uncut 6 months, within 6 months of him leaving. The board will put that down to times have changed, the effects have dated, things have moved on, but in reality, it's one man who is now Robin Duvall who can make the decision, and he can distance himself from James Furman.
Someone told me that he said that his concern wasn't for the great British middle class, it was for the auto worker in Birmingham. Well, this is a little patronizing, it seems to me. I mean, why does he think that a person who has a blue-collar job, who works with his hands, is somehow not mentally capable of making judgments that a person who works with a pencil is? I mean, that's really insulting, isn't it?
There's a famous quote by Ken Pedry back in the 80s where, in reference to Driller Killer, he said, imagine the effect it might have on the man in the street. And that is very much the board's view, that they have the holier-than-thou approach, that they know best. And yes, they do sneer at the working classes. I think that's borne out very clearly in the case of Last House on the Left, where material like Sarlo and Bazemore is getting through with very little cuts, if any, and they are far more explicit than anything contained in Last House on the Left.
It's about exclusivity, it's about elitism, it's about the notion that the intellect is more permissible than the heart. I think it's a crap argument.
The rape sequence in Last House is an integral part of the film. I think that's a key reason why Feature Film Company did not accept those cuts back in 1999, because if you remove the rape sequence from the film makes little sense. It's a rape revenge narrative, and if you take the rape out of the film, then the revenge doesn't mean anything. It renders the film pointless. Therefore, it's very much a key scene. It's a key sequence. And it's also a very tough sequence to watch.
It was a difficult scene for me to do because I've never paid for sex in my life. And if you can understand what that means that I'm not a person that would go to a hooker. So I'm not a person that doesn't believe in making love. I mean, you know, having sex is it's easy. It's easy. You can go in the shower and jerk off. I mean, you know, Alex did it in House on the Edge of the Park. I mean, that's not a difficult thing to do. But making love, having a real relationship with a woman, you know, or a man, or whoever you choose to do it. I mean, just allowing yourself that vulnerability is a very hard and a very satisfying thing to be able to do, and that's something that we all need to work for. Having said that, in this scene, she was like a lox. There was no reaction at all from Sandra Cassell. For hours we tried to film this scene. So the reaction that you see on the screen is that I scared her. I ripped her pants off during the filming. And she probably thought that I was going to penetrate her. I had no intention of doing that, absolutely not. But that's the reaction you see on the screen. And that's why people react to it so much in terms of the violation of a woman. But at the same time, it's a film. It's a film. I'm an actor at that, you know, and I'm wanting to get something from her, which wasn't coming. I mean, either you do it or you cut the scene. There's no point. There's no point to making it if you can't do it the way it should be done.
The camera doesn't linger. It's not meant to be arousing. It's not meant to be titillating. The camera is not there for our pleasure. The camera is there to show us this is the reality of the situation. It's brutal. It's a disturbing sequence, but it's in no way can it be deemed pornographic by any sensible definition of the term pornography.
After a while, it doesn't seem so awful anymore. You know, in America we have these stations that simply won't play certain rock and roll. They won't play it because it's too intense or it's too musically experimental. 5 years later, they're playing it because it's a golden oldie. And I think, you know, and suddenly, after 5 years, I guess that's not suddenly, but then after a period of time, that film or that piece of music doesn't seem so revolutionary anymore, and it's not so threatening anymore.
The only time I can see Last House on the Left being released uncut in the UK is when we reach the point where all classification is advisory. Now the board themselves say that that point is inevitable, but they give it a period of 10 years. Now why it takes 10 years, I don't know. I think the public are ready for it now. I think that's the only time the film will get past uncut.
I got a lot of memories. It was the end of an era, the end of a love-in. And it was really a dichotomy in filmmaking, and I think that that's one of the reasons that it survived, because what you see on the screen is the quintessential repertory, you know, ensemble type of work. And the reason that that ensemble type of work works is because everybody really did love each other. We played as hard on the screen at our parts as we did off the screen at being our real selves. It's the first of the neo-horrors, I think. And as such, it's, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's an invention, essentially. It's an invention. The only musical instrument that's been invented in the 20th century is the pan, you know, the steel drum. That's a 20th century invention. Neo-horror films, neo-realism is an invention in the film industry, as far as I'm concerned. And what it does is it takes that inner part, that inner secret that everybody carries, that they don't want anybody to know about, that they carry with them their whole life, and it puts it on the screen, and it condenses it, and it makes it something that is either acceptable or even perhaps very reprehensible in a way, but it's something that triggers people to think. And if we can get people to think and keep on thinking, use this, since we are at the top of the food chain, hello, then maybe we will survive.
Without Last House on the Left, we wouldn't have the slasher genre that spawned from the film. It was groundbreaking at the time. It was the most violent film made at the time and was very shocking for a 1970s audience, and it paved the way for the careers both of Wes Craven, who's been prolific throughout the genre, and Sean Cunningham, who went on to start the Friday the 13th series. So I think that it's a landmark film, not only in terms of the film itself, but also in terms of the key players behind the film and the careers that they've had. David Hesse's portrayal of Krug goes down as one of the iconic performances of the 1970s. It was a true horror villain, and the other contemporary horror villains here, we're thinking of Michael Myers in Halloween, or Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Jason from the Friday the 13th. They are the other iconic horror villains of the last 25 years. Yet David Hesse's performance as Krug, he is the only one of those four villains who doesn't wear a mask. The rest are all masked. David is playing himself. He's got an intensity to his performance which is up there.
I'm not a violent person, you know. Can I be physical if I'm attacked? Sure. Playing the role was, it took me 3 weeks to recover from playing the role. That's never happened to me in my life. I mean, there was so much of Krug inside of me at that point that I really had to purge myself. And during that purging time, I really had a chance to think about what it was that I did. And I was aware that I was going to ruffle a lot of feathers. having played this role the way I did. I mean, there used to be. I told you about the story about the posters in the subway where I would find myself alone in a subway car because people would look at the poster and then see me, and then they'd kind of evacuate the subway car in the middle of New York City. New Yorkers don't do that. So they were really affected by this film. I mean, New Yorkers are the most sophisticated, cynical, and loving people in the whole world, but you can't scare them. You don't scare a New Yorker, they just don't scare. Little old ladies walking across the street. I mean, it happened for years. I had an agent